Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video for Monday, September 8th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going through my core picks. It's going to be 5 players in total, 1 pitcher, 4 hitters. That's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus the respective opponent, as well as some recent history. And then after that, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk through my top GPP teams to stack for Monday's slate overall. And then in the morning, I'll be listing my early morning weather report to have any game that does have a double-digit chance of rain or higher. And then I'll also be listing as many of these starting lineups as I can get to throughout the afternoon and early evening. So definitely make sure that you are checking up down in that comment section so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information, especially as we do head into lock. But without further ado, we'll get right into it with the core picks. We're going to start off at that pitcher position. I ultimately end up on Brian Wu here. He's at $10,500. He's currently averaging about 37 fantasy points per game on the season. He goes against the St. Louis Cardinals, and he has not faced the St. Louis Cardinals in his young career, so he does have no history versus their hitters in the past. But I definitely do like his upside in this matchup overall. If we look at what he's done so far in the season, he's got 12 wins. ERA's at 2.92, currently averaging about 37 fantasy points per game at $10,500. However, there are a lot of high-end pitchers that I do want to get a little bit of exposure to today, so definitely feel free to mix and match as you do see fit. And then there's also some lower price guys if you're paying up at hitter that you could also consider in Bryce Elder and Jose Quintana just in general. But with that being said, we'll get moved down to our hitters. We're going to start off at first base with Freddie Freeman. He's at $3,300, currently averaging 11 fantasy points per game, and he is going against the Colorado Rockies. It is Chase Dolander as the expected starting pitcher for them. He is 2 for 6 with 1 home run versus Chase Dolander in his career. And if we look at what Freddie Freeman's done as of late, he's got at least 1 hit in 2 out of his last 3 games. Both those games were multi-hit games, 1 home run, and does have 2 double-digit performances. So if you look at the last sample size, been really good. He had been a little bit more hit or miss leading up to that, but overall on the season, he's at a .298 batting average, 19 home runs, 77 RBIs, once again averaging 11 fantasy points per game at $3,300. Then we move down to second base. I ultimately ended up putting Isaac Collins here. You can also play him in the outfield. He's at $2,800, currently averaging about 9 fantasy points per game on the season. He's going against the Texas Rangers. Jacob Latz is the expected starting pitcher for them. He has no history versus them in the past. And I'll be honest, I have a lot of pay-up options here, so Isaac Collins was just a guy that was a little bit cheaper to sneak in there. Was a guy that I wanted to mention from the Brewers, as the Brewers are one of the few teams that I do like to stack for Monday's slate overall. So definitely do like getting to some Isaac Collins here. He's on a modest 5-game hitting streak as we do speak. However, he has 0 multi-hit games during that time span, but he does have 1 home run, 2 double-digit performances in 4 games of 9 fantasy points or higher. So if you're looking for a value option that does have a relatively safe floor, Isaac Collins fits the bill, and he does have multi-positional versatility at the same time as well. If we look at what he's done so far in the season, .275 batting average, 9 home runs, 54 RBIs, once again averaging just under 9 fantasy points per game at $2,800. Then we're going to move down to third base with Eugenio Suarez. He's at $3,400, currently averaging over 12 fantasy points per game on the season. He's going against the St. Louis Cardinals. Miles Mikolas is the expected starting pitcher for them, and he is 9 for 19 with 4 home runs versus Miles Mikolas in his career. I believe that is the most home runs of any hitter versus pitcher on the entire slate, so definitely like into that. He is on a modest 2-game hitting streak as we do speak. If you go back a little bit further, it's 5 out of the last 7, but he does have 2 multi-hit games in those 2 games, 3 home runs, and 2 double-digit performances, so he's been doing really well as of late. It's been another productive season for him as he is hitting .238 with 45 home runs, 109 RBIs, once again averaging over 12 fantasy points per game at $3,400. And then last but not least, we'll go down to Julio Rodriguez, his teammate, at $3,600. He's currently averaging over 12 fantasy points per game on the season, also going against the St. Louis Cardinals, and Miles Mikolas is still their expected starting pitcher. He is 2 for 5 versus Miles Mikolas in his career. If we look at what Julio Rodriguez has done as of late, he's got at least 1 hit in 4 out of his last 5 games, 2 multi-hit games during that time span, 4 home runs, and 4 double-digit performances. So he's been performing really well as of late. He's a guy that typically it's better in the second half of the season, and we've seen that once again this year. And he's currently up to a .267 batting average, 30 home runs, 89 RBIs, once again averaging over 12 fantasy points per game at $3,600. And then, like I did mention earlier, got a lot of pay-up options here. So if you go with these 5 players that I do currently have listed here, you have $11,400 remaining, just over $2,800 remaining per player. So going to have to find some value options out there. Obviously, if you want to pay down from one of these hitters, you can definitely do that at the same time as well. Or if you want to swap off of Brian Wu to somebody that is a little bit cheaper a pitcher, you could definitely do that at the same time as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for Monday's slate overall. So we're going to start off with the Los Angeles Dodgers. They're going against Chase DeLander. They have faced them twice this year, so they do have limited history versus them, but it is pretty decent history at that. Then we move over to the Seattle Mariners. A lot of their hitters have hit Miles Mikolas really well, although the Mariners' bats are getting a little bit up there at price in this point in time, especially when you're looking at the main guys in Kyle Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez, Randy Arozarena, and Eugenio Suarez. And then we have the Minnesota Twins as they go against Caden Dana of the Los Angeles Angels. They have no history versus him in the past, but there could be some upside there at that, and he's probably not going to pitch too deep into the game. And then last but not least, I have the Milwaukee Brewers going against Jacob Latz. Some pretty limited history there. Latz has been decent so far this season, but he's another guy that is not pitching too far deep into the game. So if they can get his pitch count up, get into that bullpen, could be a good day for those Brewers bats once again. But with that being said, these are my core picks as well as top GPP teams to stack for Monday, September 8th. As always, if you have any questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then once again in the morning, I'll be listing my early morning weather report that have any game that does have a double-digit chance of rain or higher. And then I'll also be listing as many of the starting labs as I can get to throughout the afternoon and early evening. So definitely make sure that you are checking up in that comment section once again so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information, especially as we do head into lock. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have MLB DFS in terms of the core picks, typically Monday through Friday. I know Thursday's been a little bit more hit or miss as of late. Probably not going to have it once again this Thursday, but I will be sharing my MLB DFS notes for the main slate on Thursday for free at the same time as well up on my Patreon page. And then I do have my CFL DFS video coming out once a week. Typically that comes out on Wednesdays. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get to it last week with kind of getting prepared for the NFL season and everything else like that. So I definitely do apologize for that once again. Did make my sheet free over on the Patreon page last week. And then I will also be posting an NFL DFS core pick video this week. Unfortunately, was unable to get to it for week one as I was dealing with an illness, unfortunately, over the weekend. So definitely do apologize for that. Typically, that video will be coming out on Fridays. Some weeks it might come out on Saturdays, but definitely be on the lookout for that. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for Prize Picks and BetUS if you're a brand new user on either one of those sites. When you sign up, make your initial deposit, you'll get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks, it's 100% match up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS for Monday, September 8th.